Now, if we, I'm just going to draw a timeline here. We go back to 2011 and draw the geopolitical timeline for Malaysia. Now, this is Dr. Mahathir Mohamad, and he was Prime Minister of Malaysia for 22 years. And he was not happy with The Hague. This is the International Criminal Court in Holland. And that's the court where if a country illegally invades another country or carries out war crimes or what have you, that's the court where prime ministers and presidents should be put on trial and tried for international war crimes. And he was not happy with that court. He felt that they should be putting Bush and Blair on trial for the invasion of Iraq. So because he wasn't happy about it, he actually set up his own war crimes tribunal entitled the Kuala Lumpur War Crimes Tribunal, which he set up in 2007. So this is the former Prime Minister of Malaysia setting this up, so it's got the approval of the Malaysian government, and they held several tribunals, and this is a photograph from one of them. Now I'm going to show you a clip from one of these tribunals. This is a 4-day-long tribunal where they put Bush and Blair on trial. They actually had defence lawyers representing Bush and Blair and prosecution. But I've condensed it down to about 5 minutes, just to give you a flavour as to what was going on in Malaysia in 2011, because this has not been reported in British media. Now before I do that, before I actually show you this clip, anyone who knows this, anyone knows who this guy is? Anyone recognise him? No? Come on, someone must know who it is. Alfred Weber, that's the guy. Now Weber, Dr. Alfred Weber, when I did my 9/11 analysis of the 50-odd video clips of Flight 175 and compared that to the radar paths, and I published all of that information, Weber contacts me. Weber is interested in the UFO subject, exopolitics, 9/11. He has a radio show, but he's also an international lawyer. So Weber contacts me, he says, I'm very interested in your research and I've written an article all about it. Would you come on my radio show? So I read his article and I said, well, look, Weber, that article is mixing in a whole load of crap, basically, that I don't approve of. I want you to rewrite that article. I want you to retract your original article, which is basically muddling up my research, and I want you to put out a new correction. And I never heard from him. Now, Andrew Johnson has also crossed swords with him, because Andrew Johnson, Weber was conducting an interview with a woman who was talking about Dr. Judy Wood, and when this woman mentioned the research of Dr. Judy Wood, Weber pipes up, without referring to the name Dr. Judy Wood, please explain why you think HAARP was involved in 9/11. So in other words, Weber was steering the conversation, and Andrew Johnson wrote an article about that. The point being that I believe, and I have done for probably at least 2 years now, that Weber is some form of CIA asset. Yeah? So the point being, they've got their spy at the Kuala Lumpur War Crimes Tribunal. America have got their spy on the inside, which I find very interesting. Anyway, let's take a look at this clip.
The two accused, George W. Bush and Anthony L. Blair, we have emailed this to info@tonyblairoffice.org. We have served this also on the Embassy of the United States of America and the British High Commission. We believe that this service is effective. We have had no indication from the defense that they are challenging this service. The second accused, Tony Blair, was in Malaysia on the 28th of October 2011, and we attempted to try to serve him as well to ensure that he was abundantly informed of the charges. He was officiating a function here at the Mandarin Oriental, but we were unable, our people were unable to effect service because there was considerable security. He was whisked away right past our people who were waiting to serve it on him. And we tried to inquire as to where he was staying, but I think security was such that we were unable to effect service on this gentleman.
So considered not served. Considered not served.
On that day was not served, but we have already effected service through the other modes that we have just described.
Oh yes, 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 yes. We We were not talking about the incident.
Yes,
he was here.
He was not served, yes.
He was not served.
We're just showing the strenuous efforts we have made
Right.
to try to secure the attendance.
Go on.
And finally, the fact that this trial is going to be today has also appeared in the Washington Post of 15th November 2011 as a news item, as well as the Daily Telegraph of the United Kingdom.
Charge number 1 is against George W. Bush and Anthony L. Blair. The accused persons had committed crimes against peace in that the accused persons planned, prepared, and invaded the sovereign state of Iraq on 19 March 2003 in violation of the United Nations Charter and international law. On 19 March 2003, the United States of America and the United Kingdom launched a war against Iraq without the sanction of the United Nations and without just cause whatsoever. During 2002, Bush and Blair, without the sanction of the United Nations Security Councils, directed air strikes against Iraq in order to degrade Iraq's air defenses in preparation to invade Iraq in 2003. Under the UN Charter, there is no right for implied authorization to take unilateral decision to use force against a sovereign country, except in self-defense in circumscribed circumstances. Blair had, in testimony to the Chilcot inquiry on 14 January 2011, admitted that the then Attorney General, Peter Goldsmith, advised that the further security solution after SCCR 1441 was obligatory under international law to authorize the use of military force. In any event, it is now a well-settled established fact that, which is in the public domain, that Iraq did not possess any weapon of mass destruction. This information was willfully ignored by Bush and Blair and demonstrates that Bush and Blair knowingly contrived to use an utterly false basis to invade Iraq several years later, that is in 2003. On 24 September 2004, the then UN Secretary General Kofi Annan also weighed in to state that the war against Iraq was illegal. Bush and Blair have over the years since the war admitted that they knew or believed the intelligence reports on weapons of mass destruction to be unreliable. And yet they proceeded unilaterally to wage war based on a false and contrived basis. More than 1.4 million Iraqis have been killed.
All right, anyone remember seeing that on BBC News? Breakfast telly? So that tribunal found Bush and Blair guilty of war crimes. They then held another tribunal in May 2012 where they found Bush, Cheney, Rumsfeld and all of these others guilty of conspiracy to commit war crimes, specifically torture. They then held another tribunal in November 2013 where they found the State of Israel guilty of genocide of the Palestinian people, and Amos Yaron, who I think is a military person, guilty of crimes against humanity. And do bear in mind that when they were running these tribunals, they were sending all of their information to The Hague after they'd come to these verdicts. They're saying, well, look, we've run these independent tribunals, you really need to put these guys on trial in the proper court that can get them locked up. So we then had MH370 happen in March 2014, this alleged missing aircraft. So Obama then goes over to Malaysia in May, a few months later, May 2014, and holds a press conference with the Malaysian Prime Minister, our Hollywood actor. And in those meetings, Obama's standing there saying, well, the Americans are doing everything we can to help Malaysia find this missing airliner. Absolute lie, in my opinion. I think Obama knows what's happened to that plane, and I did point out that I think I can see things in the body language of these clips that Obama knows that Malaysia is on the hit list. And none of the war crimes tribunals are discussed publicly at this press conference. Okay, so we then had a number of very negative stories pertaining to Malaysia come out in our media, which was beyond coincidence in my opinion. We had the Gareth Huntley story, this guy who allegedly had his throat cut while he's backpacking in Malaysia, with photographs like this one, which in my opinion is saying, well, you can't trust the Malaysians, they're a militaristic tin pot dictatorship and they're putting the lives of our Westerners at risk. Okay, we then had MH17 downed in the Ukraine, allegedly shot down by a missile. And they were even putting a negative spin on Malaysia with this incident. They said, well, Malaysia should not have flown that aircraft over a war zone, and that's why it got shot down. We then had a further major story which was plastered all over our mainstream media with the word Malaysia on the front pages, because there was 2 medical students who were allegedly murdered in Borneo. Now, I'm not saying that these are not genuine murders and these are not genuine incidents. What I'm saying is, coincidentally, we've got all this negativity pertaining to Malaysia. Now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to show you some aircraft crash statistics, which I think shed some light on this story. This graph shows the number of commercial aircraft flights from 1994 to 2013. So in 1994 there were 15 million commercial flights. In 2013 there were 25 million. 25 million per year. So you can see how air travel has increased over the last 30 years or so. Okay. Now, this graph here, I got this from planecrashinfo.com. This shows the number of plane crashes per year of commercial airliners that were carrying more than 19 people. And you can see from the sort of early 90s how the number of crashes has come down drastically, even though the number of flights has gone up significantly. So in 2013, there were seven aircraft crashed. And in 2014, just 6 out of 25 million flights. That's how safe air travel is today. Very, very safe, at an all-time high. This is the total number of deaths on, in commercial air travel. In 2013, it was just 200 out of 25 million flights. And in 2014, it was 800. Now, let's just plot those figures on the screen. In 2013, we had 25 million flights. Just 7 of them crashed, with approximately 200 deaths. If we consider Malaysian Airlines, I read that 43,000 passengers travel per day. If you average that at about 150 and spread that over a year, you come to around about 105,000 flights. Now, if you divide that over 25 million, you find that the Malaysian Airlines is less than 0.5 of all air travel. So Malaysian Airlines is not a big airline. It's not one of the biggest. It's less than 0.5% of all commercial flights. So let's take a look at what happened in 2014. We had MH370 with 239 deaths, and we had MH17 with 298 deaths, both of them Malaysian Airlines flights. A total of 537 deaths from one single airline, which consists of less than 0.5% of all air flights. Now, I think you'll agree that just looking at these cases statistically, these suggest that they're not accidents. Would anyone agree with me? Statistically, that looks out of place to me. It looks like there's some funny business going on when you consider those figures. So, and when you then add in all of this, putting the likes of Bush and Blair on trial and then telling The Hague to go and put them on trial, I suspect that the MH370 was a psychological operation done deliberately just to nudge the public's perception into thinking that Malaysia is a state that cannot organise its affairs and really needs to be regime changed. That's what I think is going on here. Because Malaysia don't have any weapons of mass destruction. No one would ever believe that if they spun that in the media. Yeah? So they have to manufacture an excuse in order to get rid of this rogue nation. And that's what I think is going on with both of these missing or downed airliners. Now, we then had In December 2014, I read that Obama actually played a round of golf with the Malaysian Prime Minister. So was that some kind of ultimatum? And then, just, what, 3 or 4 days ago, there was a helicopter crash. This is the Malaysian Prime Minister. 2 of his aides that were very close to him were killed. So is this another warning? Okay, so just come back to this article, Malaysia Airlines Flight MH370, the 14 conspiracy theories. 14 conspiracy theories. And this is one thing that I've noticed, because I'm convinced that this was a psychological operation, and there is a group that do know where that aircraft went. When they put that into the mainstream media, they know that maybe 99% of people will believe that story, will believe their propaganda. They've got the mainstream media bought and paid for. But they also know there's going to be a small percentage who listen to John Lear and realise they're talking bollocks, right? So what I've noticed that they do is that they chuck out several conspiracy theories just to confuse those who don't believe the official story. And then they write articles like this one, taking the piss out of people who don't believe the official story. The 14 conspiracy theories. And I noticed that in this article, the main conspiracy theory that they did try and debunk the most was the thing had landed at Diego Garcia. And I think a lot of people suspect that it may have landed at Diego Garcia. But as I said, I've not actually looked at any direct evidence for that. But I think it's possible. Okay.